You married into this family, but you still prioritize your mother before us. Do you think that's acceptable? It's your punishment for neglecting the housework. Get out! My mother-in-law laughed hysterically while throwing my late mother's belongings into the incinerator. I was stunned. You're not doing that without knowing the true values of those items, are you? You say you've lived a first-class life, surrounded by first-class things. That's right. I declared something important to her as she snorted at me and left my in-law's house. I'm Madison, a 28-year-old sales executive. My husband Josh and I are co-workers and still work at the same company. We've been married for 4 years and been living with my in-laws for about 1 year for a reason. My in-laws are an affluent family and reside in a massive compound. Josh and I are given our old small house away from the main building. We live separately but are very close to each other. Josh is the second son, and his older brother is supposed to inherit the family property. Since he has been temporarily posted abroad for his work, we have moved in to take care of his house. My mother-in-law Janet does not think well of me and harasses me with sarcastic comments and little misdeeds. I've been struggling to deal with her. My father's side of the family has an old history, but he passed away from illness when I was very young. My mother raised me on her own. Janet scorns that I come from a single-parent family, in which the mother is still working, and I too work instead of being a full-time housewife. Even though you're married, you refuse to be a housewife and take advantage of living with your in-laws. Don't you realize how shameless you are? You must be greedy with money coming from a single mother home. How can you not be satisfied with Josh's income? She sarcastically criticizes me whenever she sees me. However, in front of Josh and my father-in-law, she's cheerful with a smile on her face. I've been overwhelmed by this gap and haven't been able to talk to Josh about her bullying. Since I haven't resisted her, she's been increasing her maliciousness toward me. Once a week, we all have dinner together at the main house. One night, she mentions, I want to ask Madison to clean the shed for me sometime soon. I always ask our cleaners, but I want her to be familiar with what's inside. She asks with an apologetic expression. A shed? I don't mind, but I don't see the point in me checking inside. That's not true. As a family member who lives in this house, it's good for you to know about the history. She immediately denies my comment. If it's okay with you, honey, go right ahead. But we are leaving as soon as my brother comes back, so you don't really have to. Josh helps me out. I don't have any special plans for my next day off, so if you just want me to clean it up, I'd be happy to do it. I don't think I could go so far as to memorize or figure out what's in there though. I know it would be a bad idea to refuse her, so I decide to go along. On my day off, I follow Janet to the shed. Inside is covered in dust, as if it's never been cleaned, contrary to what she had mentioned. Well, start cleaning. I'm stunned at the state of the shed as she turns to leave. How do you want me to clean it? You're not making me to do it alone, are you? I ask her out of disbelief. Of course, you always neglect your housework using your job as an excuse. You should be doing more on your days off. Just get on with it. She puts on a disgusting smile and shuts the door, leaving me inside. I hear a questionable clunking sound. I'll check on you every hour. I'll let you out of here when it's perfectly clean, so get on with it. She yells from outside the door. I rush to open it, but it's already been locked. There's a locker with cleaning supplies and a water pipe on the wall. I have no choice but to start cleaning. My phone is left behind, and there's no clock in the room. I have no idea how long it has been since I started cleaning. I'm becoming fearful of the situation. After all, Janet rarely comes to check on me, despite saying every hour, and shows up randomly. You know, I've been living a first-class life surrounded by first-class things. I understand the value of the items here, but you don't, do you? She comes just to make sarcastic remarks. Well, take this opportunity to get a good sense of the value of all this today. She closes the door again and walks away. I've been cleaning since early morning, and she's finally satisfied in the evening. I'm able to escape from the dingy shed at last. I wasn't even allowed to have lunch. I walk back home feeling lightheaded, and I'm determined to speak to Josh about it. I'm sorry to do this as soon as you're home, but I need to talk to you about something. When I mention it, he senses something. Is this about my mother? I'm surprised, but I start explaining what happened today and how Janet's been treating me. He listens attentively and apologizes to me. I'm really sorry that I didn't realize it before. I know she sometimes looks down on people and harasses them in small ways when she doesn't like something. But this is the first time I hear she's done something to that extent. I'm confused as to why I should believe your every word. I mean, I can't make a clear judgment right away. I haven't said anything about it to you for a long time, and I understand that you don't want to believe anything bad about your mother. I'm not asking you to do something about it right away. I just don't want to be alone with her as much as possible from now on. I'm so exhausted that I don't even wait for his reply and pass out on the bed. The subject has remained open. I try to stay away from the main house as much as possible, and don't join the weekly dinner using my work as an excuse. Meanwhile, Janet plays the role of modest mother-in-law. I wonder if Madison doesn't think well of me asking her to clean the shed. I don't want her to be mad at me. Josh's been even more confused about what to make of the difference between what I've told him and what Janet's been saying. She has explained to him about locking me inside the shed as, "I'll never do such a thing," and Madison was so absorbed in her work that she forgot to take lunch. I'm sorry I didn't remind her. I didn't feel comfortable interrupting someone who was concentrating on the work. Then one day, I get a call that my mother has collapsed, and I rush to the hospital. The doctor tells me that she has been suffering from terminal cancer, and that she has asked him not to mention it to me before. I let Josh know that I'm going to stay with her for the remaining days. Shortly thereafter, she passes away slowly and peacefully. Unable to accept the reality, I'm stunned by the sudden departure of my loved one. Your mother won't be at ease unless you give her a proper send-off. I managed to hold myself together thanks to Josh's support. She has left me many vintage designers' apparel and antique ceramics, which were her hobbies, as mementos. I take them back to my house and keep them for the time being. Then the disaster happens while I'm sorting out the medical bills and inheritance. When I arrive home, I see smoke rising from the incinerator, which has been hardly used in the yard. I'm thinking that it's none of my business and don't pay any particular attention at this point. When I start sorting out my late mother's belongings, I found that most of them have gone missing. I immediately think about the smoke and rush to the site with a bad feeling. A pile of clothes and ceramics and Janet trying to throw them into the fire come into my view. What in the crazy world are you doing? If you're home, why don't you let me know you're back? What are you doing here today? Why do you have them here? Give them back. You're so vulgar, snapping at me. They're not worth much anyway, so I thought I'd help you get rid of them. What on earth are you talking about? You married my son, and you put your mother before him and his family. Do you think that's acceptable? It's your punishment for neglecting the housework. Get out of here. You're not doing that without knowing the true values of those items, are you? You say you've lived a first-class life surrounded by first-class things. Those are worth at least $100,000. I'm going to press charges on you. I declare that much and then gather up the scattered items on the ground. You gotta be kidding me. You can't try to cheat me out of my money. You better leave Josh. Ignoring her ranting and raving, I pack up my belongings and leave my in-laws' house to stay at an apartment where my late mother lived. I go through the items and realize that many are still missing, and the remains have been damaged by being trampled on or mishandled. I immediately call the attorney who assisted me with my late mother's estate and ask him to start the process of property damage charge. I also call Josh and explain what's going on. Your mother burned my mother's mementos and told me to leave the house. So I packed up my belongings and left. I then explained to him everything that has happened. I tell him that I'm going to file a charge against her, and that I'll never want anything to do with her in the future. I also mentioned that I would not interfere in any way between him and his mother, but that I would like to divorce him if I have to continue dealing with her. I sent him a video of Janet burning my late mother's belongings and let him hear the voice recording of her rant. Instead of coming to ambiguous conclusion like last time, he is forced to recognize that she has been malicious toward me. Her behavior this time is way out of line, and I reiterate to him that I never ever want anything to do with her. At first, he's still somewhat reluctant to believe what I'm telling him is true, but with the evidence, he's forced to accept it. He sincerely apologizes to me and promises that he will sever all ties with her too. I'm relieved to hear that, and then I again speak to my attorney to calculate the damages. When the calculation is done, I visit my in-laws with the claim. My in-laws have been notified in advance, and both of them are there to greet us. First, my attorney tells them that Janet's action falls under the charge of destruction of property, and the value of damage is more than $100,000. Wait a minute, they're just some clothes and ceramics. There can't be that much money. Janet snickers and denies the amount of money. I'm sure as I've asked an appraiser to confirm the value of each item. Are you telling me that you, who have been living a first-class life surrounded by first-class things, don't recognize the worth of those items? When I snicker back at her, her face turns bright red. Don't try to deceive me. The value of those things goes down as they age. Then my attorney patiently explains that she's indeed correct if things are not well taken care of. However, my late mother's collection falls into a rare and high-demand category. The value has jumped because they've been produced in such small quantity, or the artists have already passed away. He carefully explains that each item has been reappraised at the time of inheritance. After listening to this, Janet still keeps fussing. My father-in-law, who has been quiet all this time, finally opens his mouth. Be quiet. He silences her at once and asks me if I remember the date when I cleaned the shed. To my surprise, surveillance cameras have been installed inside and outside of the shed for security purposes. He suggests we check the footage from that day. The data from the recordings has just barely survived. It starts showing Janet and me, then only her coming out of the shed. Then she locks the door from the outside, which is clearly shown on the screen. The view of her checking on me randomly, and finally me coming out of the shed staggering, are all recorded in front of us. Moreover, there's even a recording of Janet bringing boxes and clothes and ceramics to the incinerator, and burning them one after another.
Explain this.
She fluttered seeing the inexcusable footage. Madison has been neglecting our home. She has only cared about her mother for so long. I thought I would punish her a little. She mumbles in a trembling voice. Isn't it normal for anyone to take care of their mothers? Besides, we are indebted to her for living with us and taking care of the house while Morgan's away. We ask her to do so. But she married Josh, so she should give priority to her husband's family.
You send money to your own family every month, don't you? You leave the housework to the staff, and you don't even do anything yourself. When he scolds her, she falls silent and hangs her head down.
He stands up from his seat and comes in front of me. I am truly sorry for everything she has done. She will pay for the damages. He gives me a sincere apology and bends down to hug me. Janet agrees to make amounts for the damage, but she pleads not to file a legal proceeding. She promises to pay me a settlement instead. After consulting with my attorney, I accept her offer with a condition. She must work and pay from her own pocket. As for the damages, my father-in-law will advance the payment, but Janet will pay him back. Josh hardly says a word during the discussion. He was stunned by the sight of his mother, who has always been sweet, ranting. It's worse than he ever imagined. On the way home, I had never seen my mother so crazy. I was in disbelief. He slaps his shoulders as he mumbles. After that, my father-in-law had sent Janet back to her parents and has terminated the financial support. He's also demanding she repays him for the advancement, and she's been asking Josh and his brother for help. Josh has blocked her from contacting him. As for his brother, don't come to me for help for what you've done. He too has shut her off. As for me, I've sent some of the damaged items for repair at Josh's expense. Some of them have been restored to their original condition. Since they've been a waste of treasures in my possession, I've donated them to charities for auction, except for the ones with special memories. Janet has never worked before and has only experienced a financially comfortable life. She finds a job, but gets fired for causing problems, or quits her own immediately. My father-in-law tells me, I don't think she will complete the payment anytime soon from the way things have been going. I should pay you first. I refused, and instead, I set a deadline for the payment of the settlement through my attorney. Janet and her parents are informed that if the deadline wasn't met, I would press charges. Her parents are so concerned about their public image that they sent her to work at a factory owned by a relative. She's been managing to make the installment payments since then. Although my father-in-law has been fed up with her, he's not considering divorce. I don't want to get involved with my mother, but I need to keep in touch with my father. Is that okay with you? Josh asks me. I've been receiving the settlement. As long as I don't have to deal with her in the future, I'm not going to stop you from doing anything. His brother is coming home at the end of this year. He's yet to marry and has been questioning Janet. If I get married, are you going to bully my wife too? Depending on her attitude, she may not be allowed to return home. We've started a new life in a new residence. Josh has been keeping in touch only with his father and has been hearing about his mother from him. I haven't forgiven her for what she's done. I don't know if I will ever be able to. I'm hoping that in the unlikely event that she ever reforms, she would apologize to me in person. Right now, I'm enjoying my life alone with Josh. I know he's a little unreliable, but I would like to build a happy family that reassures my mother in heaven.